chance to look around, fire station number 11, one of our great additions to the city to protect our residents and property in this area. Keep in mind these meetings are being recorded for the benefit of those who cannot be with us in person. At this time, we'll go right to the first item on the agenda.
Yes, the first item tonight is items regarding the limited claims policy. Lance McAvoy, Director of Utilities, is here to introduce this item, but just as for a few words of context, as you'll remember, the City of Fort Smith and cities in Arkansas are generally immune from tort liability, unless to the extent that they purchase insurance or set limits on claims that they will pay. And through our limited claims policy, the City of Fort Smith has identified a few claims that will pay regarding, started off with wastewater issues and has grown to a few other items related to trees and rights of way and storm drainage. And so with that small introduction, I'll introduce Lance McAvoy.
Thank you, Mr. Dingman. Just a few highlights. You can hear it out here. However, I'll try to project there too, but these mics are very hot out here. They're very quiet up there from what Mr. Boofink told us. So we basically, if you look at page 5 of your packet, we kind of did from a 2019 through current snapshot of last week. You'll see that the majority of what we end up paying out on are sewer damages, and that's where we have a backup in a sewer line that goes into a house. So that's where the majority of it is. Some of the water damage is due to things like a line breaking that was caused by a pressure or a flooding situation. We've had a few of those claims. We did have one fallen tree that was in 2022. And we had a displaced manhole earlier this year, and we just had another potential claim that would be filed on that. As far as the flash flooding goes that the board passed last year, we've had one claim for that. There was a question about what do we do if the driveway is damaged due to a water leak. And usually if it's damaged due to a water leak, it's because the leak is underneath the driveway. We end up digging up the front end of the driveway, fixing the leak, and then replacing that driveway. It's normally done in conjunction with our street department, unless it is a aggregate driveway, one of the decorative aggregate, or a stamp, and then we will contract that out. And with that, I'll sit for questions or board discussion.
Thank you, Director Christina Savage.
So, Lance, the people that were on Edinburgh, did they not apply for this?
The ones we bought all the
Yeah, and we were going to do 5,000 per household. Only one of them applied for it.
I think that particular issue was before we had adopted this claims policy. I don't remember how those were paid out. I do remember that offer to them.
Policy, right?
Well, I think this policy sort of grew as a result of that incident. Most of those properties were offered for sale. We purchased most of them, but I don't believe we reimbursed for any of the personal property on in those locations.
I thought we did, because one of the issues we had in the people that came to speak, it was one of the families was a mother that was pregnant, and all of the diapers, she'd been saving diapers when her baby was born, and that flooding, it ruined all that. And so, that was what I had in mind when we were talking about this, for people through no fault of their own, and I felt like the city was at fault in that instance, should help people, especially people who are renting and didn't have insurance to cover it. So that's why I was surprised if only one person utilized it.
And to what Mr. Dingman said, I believe a decision was made by the board to do something for that group, and then the resolution forming that into this limited claims liability going forward happened after that was paid out. So that's why there's only been one since it was put into the formal document.
Okay, thank you.
I think that's correct.
Are there any other questions from the board?
Lance, where's that in the chart that we have there? I'm sorry to ask, but I see the chart from 2019 to 2025.
I did not, I noticed that it was not in there. I believe it was the end of last year, Mr. Dingman. Do you remember when the one was paid out for the flooding?
Would y'all update it and send it to the board?
Yeah, we'll
Thank
get
you.
that.
And update the packet here
I don't-
with that information.
I don't remember the date.
Yeah, we'll get that.
Thank you.
Director Kemp?
Thank you, Mayor. Lance, when I looked at this, I was just, how do we proactively inform residents about this? Is it when they call in that they're referred to a link, or how does this information get to residents?
So on sewer backups, if we go out and we investigate, because there's one of two things happens. It's either a backup due to the private service line being stopped up, which is on the homeowner, or it's due to our sewer main doing something called holding. It backed up and it caused that. Once that's done, they are actually given a packet by the supervisor who is on site, who's filling out the SSO, the sanitary sewer overflow report that we have to do for all of these, and explaining to them, and then gives them numbers and emails to contact us should they have additional questions. So that's how that's done on that. Water issues are kind of the same way. The tree issue, it's unless someone calls in, and says, hey, the tree fell. We've only had one of those claims ever, and that was in 2022. And then the flooding, I believe, I'm not sure, because the flooding is something new. We just had one of those. We get those directed to us. We actually handle all of those and then send it to the proper department to issue the payment on that.
Another question is, have there been any residents who tried to file, but they were told they didn't qualify? And if there were some people that didn't qualify, what were some of those common barriers for them not meeting qualifications?
Again, if it was on their line that caused it to back up in their house and it wasn't due to us, that's one that would not qualify. But if it backs up and they call us, we have to go out to determine what the cause is, because if it is on us, we have to file a report with the state that then goes on to EPA. That's part of our National Pollution Elimination Discharge Permit, and it's also part of the consent decree. If it's on them, if we can sit there and we open the manholes upstream and downstream of where their tap is, and we see that it's flowing fine and they're still having backup, then they need to call a plumber, and that would be a reason why we would not pay, because it was not the fault of the city.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board? Okay. Seeing none, thank you, Lance. We'll go to B, item B of 1.
We have addressed that, Mayor, I believe.
That we'll go to item number 2.
Okay, item number 2 this evening is discussion regarding water and wastewater services provided to the town of Arkoma. If you remember, last month there was some correspondence related to the increases to sewer rates that are taking effect June the 1st. That information was shared with all of our customers, including the town of Arkoma, who then inquired and sent a letter asking for a different consideration for the volume of use and discharge that Arkoma does. And so with that short introduction, I'll introduce again Lance McAvoy to talk about this item.
Yes, in your packet on page 13 begins kind of a lengthy memo, and I apologize for the length. I try to keep those short, but there was a lot of information I felt that we need to share. In essence, I have been asked, how did we come up with the rate way back? And it's based on pumping, conveyance, and treatment. And one thing that we have had with Arkoma is we did have a wet weather SSO site due to I&I issues that they may experience, and we had to upsize our line. So we upsized the line to be able to handle ours plus what we receive from Arkoma. This wastewater discharge does go through the Mill Creek pump station and thus could impact the use of the EQ basin there. The pump station pumps it directly to P Street, and it is treated just like if at my house I were to discharge wastewater down the drain, however that may be. In that case, it goes to Mazard, but it's treated in the same principle and same way. And that's where looking at conveyance, infrastructure improvement, pumping, treatment, it came out to be that is what the rate should be, is the equivalent of what everyone else pays.
Do we pay for their SSOs?
No, we do not.
Okay.
We do not report those. We do not, basically they have a manhole that right around there, they have a flow meter that measures the discharge of wastewater to the city. That's what they're billed on. But the entire infrastructure, their water infrastructure and wastewater infrastructure, is paid for by Arkoma.
What is, Lance, what's the rate that Arcoma's paying?
I believe I had it in here. Currently, they are paying $2.69 a CCF.
What rate are the citizens of Fort Smith paying?
$8.45.
Mayor, I have a question.
Okay, go ahead, George.
Director Christine Caceres, and then Director George Caceres.
Lance, in this agreement, I didn't see any penalties. Is that typical that we would enter into an agreement that had no penalties?
No, ma'am. In the past, there was a 10% late fee penalty. The agreement that is in here is the one that Arkoma supplied to us for the board's consideration.
Okay.
Director George Caceres.
Lance, let me ask you, how did this go on for 3 years and nobody said anything?
During that 3-year period, we met with Arkoma several times. Administration and utility staff met with Arkoma due to the fact that they were in arrears in their bills. The agreement was that we would waive late penalties if they would set up a payment plan that was fair to everyone, if you will. No payment plan was ever set up. And during this last meeting, then we raised rates. That went out to them along with a letter from our legal department saying you are in arrears and we would like you to catch up on your bill. So that's...
But 3 years? I mean, if a homeowner is 10 days late, they get the water shut off.
I understand.
I don't understand, this didn't make sense to me. Is there some kind of political connection there between Arkoma and somebody in the city, or?
Not that I know of. I
Well,
mean, the only thing I can point to is, you know, you're shutting off, I believe they said they had 618 users.
yeah.
So you're putting 618 people out of water, but we would still be receiving sewer from them anytime that it rained if they had a large amount of I&I.
Is it utilities policy not to notify the board of things like this?
This was given to administration, and administration...
See, I just find it, 3 years, just like the recycling, remember?
Mm-hmm.
3 years and we're in the dark, we look like fools, and now 3 years here, and this doesn't add up to me, Lance. Sorry, but...
Director Neil Martin.
Lance, what do they pay for water? What does Arkoma pay for water?
They pay the south of the river. I don't believe I have that with me.
Okay, so they're paying the same amount
As Barling, Franklin Sebastian.
So when those rates were raised, it was raised on our...
Yes.
Okay. So what's the point of this discussion tonight?
I'm going to defer to Mr. Dingman on that.
The point of this discussion is just to inform the board of these issues,
Okay.
not necessarily seeking a response or direction necessarily from the board unless you have one.
I do.
Okay.
you know, we got to figure out what we do as it relates to what they owe us already. But, you know, our citizens are facing very high wastewater rates.
Yes.
You know, we're having a vote today specifically around that. I'll ask one more question before I make my final statement. Is anybody else, do we have sewer, do we process wastewater for any other city?
No, we do not. We used to do it for Barling, but when the FCRA came in, they took over the Chaffee Lagoon system and severed that connection.
Okay. I'm of the belief that Arkoma needs to pay the same thing the city of Fort Smith users pay.
Yeah, I agree too.
You know, I understand the concerns here. I wouldn't be all that happy if I was a Arkoma resident and have rates raised, but we can't subsidize someone else. And so it's my belief that they have to abide by the same rules and the same conditions as the city of Fort Smith. So that's what I'm going to push for. And I would say we need to move on that expeditiously and get those rates in accordance with the city of Fort Smith.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, those are set to go into effect June 1, just like the rate increase for all citizens. That's why they were notified of that rate increase that started this.
Well, and to that point, everybody in here, if you live in Fort Smith, has paid a higher water rate or higher sewer rate even before these rates went into effect. So, yeah, I mean, as soon as possible, I think we've got to put that in place.
Thank you, Director Christina Casavage.
Yeah, I was going to say what Director Martin said, that we can't subsidize Arkoma, and, you know, not as a director, but as a citizen, you know, it makes me angry to think that I'm paying sometimes $1,000 to water during the summer to subsidize someone else. You know, what it reminds me of is when you're on the plane and they say, you know, put your mask on before you know, help the child sitting next to you with their mask. I mean, we don't have our mask on, much less to be subsidizing someone else. And, you know, it seems like a reoccurring theme that I'm hearing, and this was the situation with the auditor, is, you know, we gave it to administration and it never got to the board. So as a board, I think that may be something we need to think about policy-wise, you know, what comes to us, because I don't want to hear any more of, I sent it to administration and then the board never got it. That's not going to work for me anymore.
Mayor, I have one question.
Let me go to Director Kemp.
Yeah, go ahead.
George, if you want to go ahead, oh, wait,
No.
George, go ahead. I'll wait on you.
Lance, let me, I was thinking about something.
I'm sorry, Director Kemp was next.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, Director.
Go ahead.
I'll defer to my colleagues and then I'll go. Go ahead.
Who?
You let the mic go.
Are you in the queue?
I'll wait on you, George.
Hey, Lance, I was just thinking of something. If they refuse to pay us, what legally we can't shut their sewer off, can we?
Shut their water off. Sorry, Lance.
I believe we could shut off the water under the current water agreement. So they have they are one of the few that have a current water contract with Fort Smith.
Yeah.
And I believe in their non-payment for water or sewer, because it's kind of one bill, and under Arkansas state law, if someone doesn't pay their sewer bill, the water company can shut off the water for non-payment of sewer. So either or, that would be an option that we could follow.
So technically, the town's dead then, with no water or sewer, right?
I would say yes. In fact, I would say that, yeah, if you don't have water to a town, the town dies.
Yeah. I was just curious. Thank you.
Director Kemp.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Lance, what's the risk to Fort Smith ratepayers if we were to allow Arkoma to continue in this path? How does this actually affect, and I know there is an effect, what is the effect to the Fort Smith ratepayers?
It impacts debt service coverage.
Yep.
It impacts potential O&M cost and budgeting issues. And again, I feel that based on how we got to that number, you know, I don't know, it could end up somebody seeks legal counsel saying it's unfair for us to pay this when someone else pays that. I can't speak on a legal standpoint, but that's something I would think could happen.
Do you have an idea of the amount of money we're talking about by them getting the low rate and the citizens of Fort Smith? Do we have an idea of how many dollars we're missing out on? Scale?
I can get that for you. I mean, if you'll give me just a second.
Sure.
And this does not include, and I'm going to use 24 because I have a full year of 24.
Sure. While you're figuring that, I would just say to my fellow board members, I stand in agreement that we made rates based on these things, and other municipal governments are agreeing to this structure. I think we should proceed as the structure that we proposed. If we were trying to be gracious to the 618 residents of Arkoma in some sort of fashion or another, the proposal in the agenda packet is too much, in my opinion. And 5 years to return back the $120,000 is too long. And so some sort of structure different would be something I would be seeking. And then if I'm understanding right from what I've read in this packet, 80% water loss is substantial. And to only pay for the 20% that you're getting to actually send out, that's just not acceptable. And if we were to sort of form some agreement like this, I would hope administration would be asking for specific benchmarks on system repair, and not just saying, well, sure. So I'm very uncomfortable with what I've seen in this packet. I think it's going to hurt our debt coverage ratio, which I wanted to confirm, and I feel like you've confirmed, Lance. And then, do you have a dollar amount?
So if in 2024 they had paid the 845, the difference in our revenue would have been $707,640.48, and that does not include the anything dealing with their base fee, which I believe they are already paying the $450 base fee. So to that point, you're looking at over $700,000 difference for 24 that we would have had as revenue if they were at the and that's at the 8.45, $8.45. That doesn't include the newer rate.
And when we talk about being so close to our debt coverage, that $700,000 is a big deal. And moving a percentage point or two, when you start talking about the ending numbers, trying to get to the 110%. And so, yes, those are the comments I'd like to make. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Settle?
Thank you, Mayor. Lance, is there anybody outside the city of Fort Smith that is on our sewer besides Arkoma?
There are a few direct customers that actually will be paying a 50% surcharge because we do maintain their collection system, and it's in the county. One is Gerdau Steel, and some of those islands that have not been annexed in. It's the same customers that that are on water that pay the 50% surcharge, but not all of those customers on water have sewer. A lot of those have septic.
Do they pay the 150% surcharge on water
And on the sewer,
and the sewer?
as of June 1.
Can we get a list of those customers and where the locations are at?
Yes, we can. I will mention that will need to be kept confidential because that information is exempt from FOIA because it gives direct customer information. But
I'm
we
sorry.
can give that information to the board.
You just told me one of the customers right now.
I did, yes.
I mean, to me, that's not FOIAble. It's a customer of ours. It should be out there. Because I don't remember this board having any discussions about any customers outside the city that could tap into the sewer.
Okay.
And my greatest concern is ETJ just got taken away. And I think this board should have the ability to govern what we do in and outside the city if somebody wants water and sewer. Because what I don't want to end up having is people get outside the city and want water and sewer and build whatever they want. That was the whole purpose of the ETJ, and now it's gone because some developer in Northwest Arkansas. And I'm saying that because here we are, we have a 611 development, right, housing development, that has a 1976 agreement that nobody on this board knew about till a little bit ago. And the citizens had a 167% rate increase from the consent decree start. And yet they have agreement. To me, this is so wrong in so many ways. $750,000 lost in 1 year. So the question is, how many miles of sewer and water do they have? Because theoretically, shouldn't they just be individual customers of ours? Because that's what you're proposing, is that each one's individually a customer of ours, and they should be. So I'd like to know how many miles of water and sewer lines they have. I don't need to know it now, that's what I'd like to know I have. But I think this board should know how many businesses or residents are on the city sewer that's not in our city. Because if we don't, I'm afraid it's more than we all think. That's what I'm afraid of. But I think the board, if we want a policy, there should be a board policy, and I'll make it, that we have a discussion down, maybe next study session down the road, that only the board approves water and sewer permits that are outside the city. Because then we can govern what we do going forward. Because we had a development that's going to come back to us asking for water and sewer that's literally right next to city limits. And the board voted against what the developer wanted out there in Riley Farm.
Thank you. Director Rigo?
Thank you, Mayor. So Lance, I just have a couple of questions. The first is, what, if any, rules or regulations govern, and are there any examples of systems within the state of Arkansas, water, sewer systems in this case, but water or sewer systems within the state of Arkansas, providing a service across a state line to in this case, a community in Oklahoma? What, if any, germane rules or things might apply to that? And then I guess the question that I have is, there's $122,000 that's owed to us now, which is separate from the conversation about adjusting the rate upwards at the beginning of June, which is what's currently on the books and what it sounds like a majority of the board is in favor of doing. What is the process like, if you have any knowledge or can acquire some knowledge for us? What is the process like when a municipal customer does not meet its obligations? The reason's almost incidental. I mean, I think we all have a sense of what would happen as an individual if you got yourself into a situation where you owed hundreds of thousands of dollars to an entity, and then first there would be garnishment of wages, then property would be seized, and then ultimately, if you had no further assets with which to pay back onto your debt, there would potentially be some sort of debt to society that would have to be fulfilled by, an incarceration potentially. What is the process like? Because I think we talk about big amounts of money that are underpaid, and there's arguments on the other side about, well, hey, the rate as it's contemplated moving forward, we don't have the revenue to actually meet that. I think we need more of a sense of what the actual real options are borne out in law and in precedent for what happens when, new rates will go into effect in June. What happens when a municipal entity can't meet a fiscal obligation to another municipal entity? I mean, I think that's I'd like to see some history on that and what the actual options are for the entity that is that is owed something from another municipality. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Neil Martin?
Yeah, just a couple of final questions. Lance, dovetailing off of what Director Settle said, you say these islands pay 1.5 times, give me the language on that again.
So it's a surcharge of 50%. They pay 1.5 times what the standard rate is for an in-town.
So they're paying more than.
They are paying more.
Citizens?
Yes.
Okay, good. One thing I would like to know, you gave us the $707,000 as it relates to 2024 rates. Can you give me the total, the difference between what Arkoma owed us between the lodging of the consent decree and today?
I'll see what we can get.
Okay, thank you.
Good question.
I will also, one thing that, and this is kind of getting in the weeds, I went back, Mr. Dingman requested the 76 agreement. All I could find was the 1980 agreement. But I will state that I believe it was 1985 or 86. This is not the first time Arkoma has been in arrears. So I didn't have a chance to go through all of it, but I will, and then pass that information on to Mr. Dingman. So this isn't kind of undiscovered country, if you will, or undiscovered territory, but I do want to get that fully documented for administration to share with the board.
Director Kemp.
Just listening to Director Settle and Director Martin, I just also want to add on, you know, we've read in the memo, I just was rereading while they were talking too about, talking about, hey, while there may be some perception that Arkoma sewer customers have been received some discount or favorable rate, they have not, as the customer rates have historically been higher than those charged to Fort Smith residents. But I would just propose, this is the regional asset that Fort Smith has, and that should be that way by design. And when our residents ask why they're being charged a higher rate or facing a rate increase, and I hear a sentiment usually like, well, then, you know, people are going to move out of the city. I think it needs to be clear, we're doing the best we can for our residents with the asset that we have. And if you move outside of the city, it's going to cost you more. And we're doing our best to keep you as a Fort Smith resident in mind. And I think that principle has to be in these considerations. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Director Settle.
Lance, where's the pipe that ties Fort Smith to Arkoma go through?
We have several. I think we have 3 total. I will get you a map.
Okay.
It'll be easier to give you a map than to just say the intersection of State Line Road and this
But
road.
it eventually goes to
Mill Creek.
Mill Creek. Okay, thanks.
Director Christina Casavage.
Lance, in the original agreement, it says, Arkoma shall have full responsibility for all maintenance and operations of Arkoma's sanitary sewer system, including all parts thereof necessary to deliver the sanitary waste to the points of connection with the Fort Smith system under such pressure and in a manner to be suitable to the treatment capabilities of the Fort Smith system. Arkoma agrees to comply with all reasonable requirements of Fort Smith. Have they done that? I mean, if
my
they
knowledge-
let their system get into such disrepair, they've got 80% water loss on the water side.
I mean, this was, I think what you were reading was out of the sewer
1980
agreement.
agreement, yeah.
The sewer agreement. And,
Well, I assume if their water system's in
well,
bad shape,
and
their
they are
sewer
having
system is as
I&I.
well.
If you look at the little chart that I provided, this is 23, 24, current on 25, and then a summary of the 3 years for totals. And you can see where in 23, their I&I for January through April, they discharged a lot more sewer to us than they purchased in water. And then when it wasn't raining, when there was no I&I, that dropped down. You'll look, and that was 4 months.
Have we been inspecting their system?
We do not have the We do
We
not have
do
the,
according to this agreement. It says Arkoma agrees that Fort Smith will have the right to inspect the sanitary sewage system of Arkoma at all reasonable times.
we have not inspected their sewer system.
Okay,
Thank you.
Director Kemp?
Just one more thing, as I was reading this, the quote that I read, Lance, about Arkoma contends that they have not received a discount or favorable sewer rate. And they're implying that they did not benefit from lower wholesale rate because they passed, are they saying that because they've had to pass higher rates than what they're billed by Fort Smith to take care of infrastructure?
So right now, their minimum base rate for sewer, and I believe this is what they're charging right now or getting ready to, prior to what is a minimum base rate for sewer of $34. Ours is $4.50. They bill on the 1,000 gallons, so for the next 4,000 gallons per 1,000 gallons, they're billing $8.40. For the 2,000 gallons after that per 1,000, it's $9.80. For the next 4,000 after that, it's $11.20. So they are passing a higher, it is a higher rate that they've established for their citizens.
And have they done that historically in the past?
I do not know.
See, I think that should be found out. I mean, if they have, and they're still maintaining an infrastructure with 80% water leaks, then I think we need to go back and I would like to know, if I was looking at this, where did those dollars go? And how were they spent to improve infrastructure? Because obviously there is an upcharge here built in on their side. So it's just another point I wanted to bring to records.
Thank you. We do have a representative from Arkoma here. We have, I think, the mayor, Mayor Joshua Johnson here. And I know if the board is interested, we could ask him to come and share with us if he's interested.
Yes, I would.
I mean, I think the direction that I provided and other board members have provided is have them incur the same rate that the citizens are incurring today. I don't know if that would add any value.
Do they have a city council over there, or just a mayor?
Sure they do, yes.
All right, if there are no further questions, thank you, Lance. This time we will go to item number 3.
Item number 3 this evening is an update regarding the Ride for Smilies Bikeshare program. Coming to the front here is Michael Mings, the city's mobility coordinator.
Oh, hello. Is that good? Good evening, everyone. It's good to be here with you all tonight. Thank you for the opportunity to provide this update on the city's Bikeshare program. It's a very timely discussion for us, but not just because the research project has concluded with Ride for Smilies, but also because May is National Bike Month. So happy Bike Month to everybody, and let's talk bikes. As you guys are aware, our Bikeshare program is called Ride for Smilies, and the program started through a grant from the National Science Foundation, which provided us with 3 years of Bikeshare operations, as well as transportation research from the University of Arkansas's College of Engineering, all at no cost to the city. And I do want to shout out our friend, Dr. Shuman Mitra, and his research team at the University of Arkansas. Dr. Mitra could have picked a lot of different communities in the area to bring a Bikeshare program to, but he chose Fort Smith, and we've been able to benefit from that in some really great ways. So thank you to Dr. Mitra and his research team, and I also want to thank our regional partners, the Frontier MPO and Wapatiti, for their involvement in the project. They've been great partners all throughout and a very huge help. For those of you who might not be aware of the exact purpose of the National Science Foundation grant, the grant was awarded to determine whether Bikeshare could help low-income individuals living in small and mid-sized U.S. communities to have better access to jobs and other essential services. And this is an interesting study because Bikeshare is very popular in big cities across the world, and there's been a lot of research done on these different Bikeshare programs in bigger cities, but there hasn't been a lot of studies performed to see whether Bikeshare could help address everyday transportation needs in rural and suburban areas like Fort Smith. And the results that we found are pretty insightful. In short, the program had many advantages for the city. Not only did our residents get to use the bikes for recreation and transportation, but we were also given a window to better understand how a bike share program could be of value to our community, as well as to other communities similar to ours. So that's a bit of the background context of the program, and as for the program update this evening, I'll touch on some highlights of how the Ride for Smilies program operated, and then I'll share some of the big lessons that we learned from this project, and then we'll discuss next steps for the program now that the grant funding is over. And my hope is that the lessons that we learned from Ride for Smilies can help inform some of the decisions that we make for our transportation system here in the city, especially for our residents who use active transportation, whether for useful or recreational purposes. And so just a few quick details for an overview of Ride for Smilies, and you can find a lot of this information in tonight's agenda packet. But the Bikeshare program operated 8 Bikeshare docking stations, mostly located on the north side of town, with one location being in Chaffee Crossing. That was a bit of a control variable for the experiment. And with our docking stations, bike rentals were required to start and end at a station. This is different from a dockless model that you'll see in some other cities, where users are allowed to start and end a bike rental from anywhere. There are trade-offs to each model, and we could discuss that later if you guys would like to. But for now, it's important to know that the locations of the stations largely determines how well the bikes performed. Some of the stations were placed in areas that would encourage useful trips, like going to a grocery store or shopping downtown. Other stations were placed close to low to moderate income housing, and then some stations were adjacent to recreational facilities like parks and trails. The Ride for Smilies fleet consisted of 40 bikes in total. We had 20 e-bikes and 20 standard cruiser bikes. Rental fees that normally would have been paid by the user were subsidized by the National Science Foundation, so we were able to offer a very affordable price for these bikes. For example, e-bikes cost $1 to unlock, and the first half hour was free after that, and then there was a charge of $1 for every half hour following that. So to ride an e-bike essentially just cost $2 an hour, and that's about 3 times cheaper than other nearby markets offering bike share programs. It's also important to note that Ride for Smilies employs 1 full-time position here locally. Our mechanic, Mike Woodruff, is amazing. He's always got a smile on his face. If you've ever seen him at one of the stations, he's always been great to talk to, and he really helped us to take the program to the next level when he got on board. So we're very thankful for Mike and his work that he did to maintain the bikes at a high level. So I'll get into the findings here. What do we learn from our 3 years of research? As of last month, we had 2,500 users ride the bikes for a total of around 9,500 trips. Our most popular stations were Riverfront Park and Chaffee Crossing, but other stations performed well in different ways. So, for example, the research showed that the stations located nearest to low income and student housing had the most repeat users. So while rental counts may not have been the highest overall, there were select individuals who were riding the bikes more frequently, which showed that the bike share service was meeting a real recurring need for transportation for these people. And so the research team took this as a positive indication towards the purposes of the research project. Our end of rental surveys also showed that many folks were using the bikes to take a trip they would have otherwise taken by foot. So the bike share proved to be a convenient alternative for short distance travel and helped to close a first mile and last mile gap that can be difficult for folks to reach in our transportation system. We also found that e-bikes outperformed the standard cruiser bikes almost 2 to 1. The e-bikes were much more likely to bring in new riders to the program. A lot of people still haven't rode an e-bike, and if you haven't before, it's a fun kind of new experience. Our e-bikes had a zip to them. It was nice because you can go faster and farther without breaking much of a sweat, and so our residents really preferred and enjoyed the e-bikes that we offered through Ride for Smilies. And then finally, I think one of the biggest takeaways that we saw was that the stations located nearest to designated bicycle infrastructure, like trails and greenways, had the highest performance. And so our trails and greenway network gave riders a safer, more comfortable, and more enjoyable experience. And the bikes helped people to get outside, get exercise, and enjoy our beautiful parks and trails. Personally, I'm very happy that we were able to give our residents better access to the outdoors and to our trails. It's good for people's health, it's good for people's wellness, and it also goes to show that when we build bicycle infrastructure, it does get used. And so next steps here. With the National Science Foundation grant coming to an end, we are at a crossroads for the program. Over the past several months, we have applied for multiple grants to sustain operations, and we should be hearing the results of those grant applications really any day now. We also found that RDOT's TAP grant, which is a grant that the city of Fort Smith has been awarded several times, is a good match for our bike share program. It funds micro-mobility, but finding the 20% match proved to be difficult this year. We could potentially secure that match for the next grant cycle, but that would leave a pretty significant gap in operations in the interim if no additional funding is secured in the meantime. So more immediately, this Thursday, I'll be at the CBID meeting and making a presentation there. On the CBID's 2024 Strategic Action Plan, one of the priority projects is a transit hub that includes bicycle and scooter rental racks. And so we'll be asking the CBID whether they think that would be a good time to pursue this project. 2 of our top 3 performing stations are within the CBID. And I know that that group really wants to work on pedestrian and bicycle-friendly improvements downtown. So there may be a way that our bike share program can help them to meet their goals. We've also met with private sector organizations searching for a title sponsor. We do have some sponsors coming through for Ride for Smilies, but not enough to sustain current operations. One additional thing for you all to consider is the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant and the funds that will be allocated for the e-bike rebate program. We anticipated that whenever the rebate program rolled out, that the bike share program would potentially take a hit with ridership if people were able to get an e-bike with a rebate. But at the end of the day, I think some people just don't want to own a bike, even if there is a good rebate that we're offering, and they would rather just use the bike share program and rent one. And so we think that residents and visitors can still find that helpful if we are able to operate. And so that's my update. I do wish that I had a better news to share about funding, but hopefully we will get some good news soon as we continue to try to keep this program rolling. Okay. So I'll take any questions from the board.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Director Rigo.
Thank you. And thank you, Michael, for your work on this program and our partners with the National Science Foundation, the University of Arkansas. I guess a few questions. What's the date, or if there's not a specific date, the quarter or the range, when does the funding conclude from the National Science Foundation?
The funding ends at the end of June, and so we already had to scale back the program from the original fleet of 40 bikes, and so now it's a scaled down version. We have 15 bikes now. It's 10 pedal bikes and 5 e-bikes that we're distributing around the different stations.
Okay. And so when I guess help us understand what some of the cost drivers are, that make up a 6-figure need at that scale of 40. And I guess first, before you do that, what's kind of the scale you have in mind? Because if it's $140,000 cost to do 40 bikes, what's the number you're eyeballing to do the scale down the 15?
So the 15 bikes through the end of June, we essentially paid what was left for our grant funds, and that was $7,500 to basically get us a month and a half. The 6-figure ask, I think with the $140,000, a lot of those costs, I mean, they employ somebody, and that person has to go and charge the bikes and maintain them. They're also, in our market, we have had some vandalism to the bikes, and so they have to have insurance on those bikes and have some kind of cost recuperation. And then also with the model that we have, they call it an equity model, where essentially we subsidize a fee, the rental fee for the bikes, and the cost would be lower than $140,000 if we had a different pricing model that would be passed on to the users of the program.
So thank you. So what happens as far as the infrastructure goes if you were not able to secure any funding, if CBID wasn't interested? There's these different docks and stations around the community at multiple locations. Is there anticipated to be a cost of removal of those that would be borne, by us budgetarily, or what's kind of the wrap-up process? What does that look like?
I don't think that it will bring any cost to the city. Tandem Mobility, our bike share operator, would essentially unhook all of the stations, and they're storing a lot of the bikes right now locally. Mm-hmm. They would just bring in a truck and move the bikes elsewhere to another market.
Sure. And then the last question I had, and thank you all for the time, did the university, have you been able to talk to Dr. Mitra? Did they find the study to be helpful?
Yes, I do think that they found the study to be helpful. I do think that it addressed some transportation gaps in the city, which we found from some of those repeat users. And they also have some next steps forward that they would like to pursue for different research purposes as well, to continue to use the research that's already been conducted. And so I think Dr. Mitra is certainly interested in further studying Bikeshare, and some of his graduate students, I think, are also looking to study it as well.
Would you mind checking in with the good doctor just to see if there's any way that we could see some of those findings, since our community as a whole got to be a research base for him, just to see what recommendations or thoughts he has?
I can absolutely do that, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Director Kemp.
Yes. Hey, Michael, good to see you tonight. For me, I'm just looking through this, and I just had a few thoughts. With the program's annual cost of $140,000, is there a story or a vision cell for the return on investment in terms of maybe community access, health, economic benefit? If you were elevator pitching for the return on this investment, is there someone that got to work, or can you give me your elevator pitch? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think first and foremost, the program is a good amenity. It gives better access to our parks and to our greenways, and so I think from a health and wellness perspective, it's a good thing for us to be able to offer this to the city, and a lot of other cities our size can offer Bikeshare as well. We saw a lot of repeat users, I think, especially around the Nelson Hall homes. In that area, it is low-income housing, and that's where we saw the highest number of repeat users who were using the Bikeshare program to get to work and to get their groceries, and even just to get outside and to get some exercise. And so there were a variety of different purposes that the bikes were used for, just kind of depending on the citizens' needs. And so, originally we had a station located at OK Foods. We had to relocate that station, but I would personally be interested in seeing more Bikeshare stations located near places of work and places of employment, kind of the transit hub idea. But I know that a lot of people did benefit from it, to be able to get outside to our parks and to have better access to essential services.
I'm sure you have the answer for this because it's been tied to such research. Can we identify maybe even a small number of high usage stations? And if the program is going to scale, do it accordingly where the funding could be secured, and these high usage stations, is there some sort of data that we've extrapolated to that point?
Yes, we do have all of the user rankings for the stations. We can see exactly how many rentals have occurred at each of the stations. And like I mentioned earlier, our Riverfront station and the station out at Chaffee Crossing perform the best. They're located closest to the trails and greenways. And so we could ask our operator, Tandem Mobility, about the cost of what it would look like to scale down and have the stations that have proven success to be able to continue to offer those. And it would come at a much different cost, obviously, than $140,000.
Could you speak more to what y'all are doing to secure long-term sponsors or even grant partners to ensure sustainability without adding to city operational burden? I mean, could you tell us more about that?
Yeah, we've reached out to a lot of local stakeholders, and we've had a lot of private meetings, and just asking to see whether there's interest in some of these organizations helping to sustain this program. We have a lot of great things that we can offer if we do bring on a title sponsor. So, for example, the program right now is called Ride for Smilies. That was for the research project. It was an acronym that was based off of the work that Dr. Mitra was doing. We could rebrand our bikes to fit somebody else's goals, and our motto in Fort Smith is Arkansas's trailblazing city. They could be the trailblazer bikes or something along those lines. And so we can offer different sponsorship discounts. If we have a title sponsor and they have a lot of employees, we can give them some employee benefits. If they bring in visitors from out of town, they can have different vouchers for free ride coupons and everything like that. And so there's a lot of different things that we can offer a title sponsor that I think would come at a really good value. And I think in New York City, they've got the city bikes. I mean, what a great way for Citibank to show investment in the community by having these thousands of bike stations located all over the place. And so I think that we have a great offering to bring to a title sponsor. We just haven't been able to identify one yet.
Thank you for your time. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Are there any more questions? Director Settle?
Thank you, Mayor. So let me understand this. The data collected is over a 3-year period, correct?
Yes.
So 9,300 rentals, 2,500 users, 23,000 miles in 3 years. So if I take that data and I divide it by 3, and take the 140,000 a year and divide that by the number of users, I come up with $17.85 a mile, or $45 a rental, or $165 a user. How does that become economic sense when it's that so high? I mean, to me, if you came here and it was quadrupled in numbers, but when you start dividing it per year, it becomes a very high cost bike. I mean, it'd be cheaper just to take on $40,000 and buy bikes at Walmart and give them to people who need them. I mean, to me, you get more benefit than this. That's what I'm struggling with. I mean, I get the purpose of trying to get the study, but I mean, at $45 a rental, that's tough. So that's what I'm trying to figure that out.
I would say the capital costs of any venture are going to be initially higher up front. The program saw year-over-year growth. We're anticipating more growth again this year, but obviously we've had to scale down our operations. I would say that this is, a model similar to what we would see with transit to subsidize these rentals. And, we were off to a slow start, but I think the end of last year, if we were able to see those numbers again and even higher, then those operating costs go down per trip. I do see what you're saying, though. It is a high upfront cost. But I also see that I think initial investments do take a little bit more upfront.
I mean, for the cost of one rental, you could almost get a season pass at Paradise Water Park.
Director
And
Kemp?
that's be used 90 days instead of one rental.
Yes, who owns the bikes? So if the program, say, for funding or whatever reasons, we were stopping tomorrow, what happens to those e-bikes?
Tandem Mobility, our operator, owns the bikes, and so they are responsible for them. They would bring in a truck from somewhere and take them to a different market, essentially. But it's their property.
So is it fair to say that the high cost the Director Shell's speaking to is because we don't own those bikes? I mean, is a company making good money on those bikes?
Are they making good money on them?
I doubt it. It's a ministry. I mean, I'm sure they're doing it for a marketplace value, correct?
In other markets, are you asking whether?
Even in our market. I mean, you're talking about $140,000 cost. What's the profit margin on the bikes? I mean, why would they leave those bikes here if they weren't profitable?
Well, because we pay them to operate the program. And so I think that, they have determined what is a good profit margin for them. And, in years past, it wasn't $140,000. I think it was less than that.
I guess what I'm saying, let me clarify. Because I agree that that's a high cost, but is that a high cost because we don't own the bikes? And I don't know what a bike costs, but since a company's dropped off their bicycles and they know they have access to grant dollars, I mean, that company has made profit, correct?
Yes, I'm sure that they have, or else they would not be operating here.
I mean, so I think that's something that, I don't even know down the road if we talked about if this doesn't continue on and you have a high usage at the river or here at Chaffee Crossing, maybe it's looking into what does it cost to acquire some bikes at a very, very small scale and allow that to build itself through its own profitability. I mean, I'm just talking out loud for just a second there. I was just thinking through that and wanted to make a clarification of who owns the bikes. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Director Rigo?
Thank you, Mayor. I just briefly wanted to say, the 140,000 has been touched on, was driven by grant funding that was received, and it was not a number that we came up with or set a bar at. And so if you moved forward and you found, kind of to Director Kemp's point, if you were able to find, a sponsor that wished to participate at a high usage area at a rate that was more targeted or a rate that was lower, there could be some, I guess, this one particular company providing these bikes that have been used as part of this study the last 3 years is not the only option under the sun.
That's correct, yes. If we wanted to, we could, put an RFP out there and see what other bike share operators would be interested in coming to Fort Smith and operating. But our contract with Tandem Mobility does designate them as the sole bike share operator, and that's pretty common for municipalities to have partnerships with a bike share operator, one or two. And so we could look into bringing somebody else here who they would have a different operating model. I'm sure the bikes would undoubtedly be more expensive, but we could find a different way to sustain.
Director, yep.
Just really quickly, or even, I've been in towns where there's scooters.
Yep.
I'm sure that cost might be lower. And I would also be curious what, like say CBID wants to do in regards to downtown. So I know you thought of those things. That I think those are just to the point that Director Rigo made.
Thank you. Any other questions for Michael? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm sure all of you have reviewed the preliminary agenda for May. Okay, I'm sorry.
I have an item related to the preliminary agenda. There's an item on the indoor sports facility that was formally placed by the board for the May 20th meeting. We've been asked to remove that item from May 20th to be represented at a future date.
Okay. Thank you. Did you have any other comment?
I would like to be that brought to a study session before the board meeting. I'd like for that item, when it comes back to us, to a study session first.
Okay, if I need four directors to
I'm good
agree
with
to
doing
remove
that.
that from, to remove it from the May 20th, since it was formally placed. And we'll find, when we're ready to move it ahead again, we'll come to a study session first. We don't.
Okay, I think we had 5.
The Museum of History itself owns the Museum of History building, I believe. Right. Yeah, it is a nonprofit. They have a board, yes.
It's a nonprofit that's run by a board.
Okay. Anything else?
Yes, Mayor. I'd like to make a motion and that I move that the board enter an executive session for the purpose of evaluating the job performance of acting city administrator next Tuesday, May 20th, following the regular meeting schedule at the end.
Okay. Anything else? This time we will go into the citizens forum. Madam Clerk?
We do have several, the first being Thomas Gage. You will be allotted 5 minutes to address the board.
All right, thank you for having me here. Thanks for listening to me. You have some booklets that need to be passed out to all you guys real quick. It's some pictures of, everybody's probably seen the email that came out through the city. It's not been resolved yet, and there's definitely a problem. I'm talking about 5300 Zero Street Grand Slam. We're getting flooded with the sisters development above me, which is south of my location. They intentionally put a beaver dam in. Somebody gave them the authority to do that. I don't think they have done it on their own, but somebody from the city okayed that. Now it's flooding. If you look on page 9, it has a water flow that's coming off the top of the hill, and it's coming down the creek that's formed off of the flooded water coming off on page 8, coming down the creek. And that creek's coming from, the original creek is coming from a page 4, which is on the new development road, which was made wrong. So to fix the problem, they cut a beaver slide in there, which is draining the water onto my property and to the Lynx's property. We sent an email out to the administration, and Maggie Rice wrote back saying they do not believe the water is purposely diverted. Well, I don't know how more diverted you can get other than digging a ditch and putting the water on it intentionally. I don't know. So I got the definition of intentionally because George Casares answered and says, what is purposely? And I got the definition, and it says, as an intentionally with full awareness of what one is doing. And I say, if you cut a ditch into somebody's property and drain the water off of a road that belongs on your property, I call that intentional. And it doesn't seem like the city has agreed to that terminology. So I'd like you guys to do something to fix that. Whether redo the road that water comes off into the existing water that's already there. Most of you guys have seen the location and have made their comments on it. I have not, in the last 6 months, I have not got any answer from the city, and it just continues to flood my property.
All right, Jeff,
And the
what can we
leaks.
do? Something's got to be done.
This development has been reviewed, and will continue to be. I know our development teams are looking at what their drainage plans are for both the Sisters, I think it's called Sisters Development, if I remember right. We'll continue to look at it, make sure everything's done properly, but as far as the inspections so far have gone, it seems everything's been done properly.
Kevin, you and Andre been out there, hadn't you?
I've been out there, yes.
What do you think?
It's the road's done crooked.
The road's built
If the
wrong.
road was done correctly, the water would have inverted the other way.
That is correct.
But it's hard for me to believe that you got two developers developing at the same time, that the developer on top knows the water's got to go somewhere, and he would not have put that into the plan, because we have detention ponds, plans, right? So there's detention ponds in most developments, most housing developments, there's always a detention pond. Everything out here, there's a drainage detention pond. So if the detention pond was in the front of the development, all the water should have flowed to the front of the development. If you're going to flow to the back of the development, I get a grass or maybe a roof, that's one thing. But if you're doing a street or something, or to this point, turns into a creek, there should have been a plan for that developer on his property to get to the creek next to the links. Because that's got to go somewhere. It's going to go to the links, and then it's going to go down the links to 0, and then it's going to go in front of your property, and they're going to cross the street on 0. So
Wow.
for me, that's where it should go. You asked me, that's my opinion, is the road was poured wrong, and it's causing the water to go the other way.
They've actually cut the curb and added the beaver slide to funnel the water on our properties, other than what's on there. And everybody's been out there, says the same thing.
Yeah.
So there's a problem.
And now there's houses up there, which makes it worse.
I agree. I went out there too, and there is a culvert on the south side of the street there on Claire
Yeah.
where the water should drain, but instead of it draining, the water's coming around the curve, and that beaver dam was cut in there so it'll drain off the north end onto the next door property and the adjacent property. If the road was just shaped differently where the
Yeah.
water would
Yeah.
properly drain to the culvert, it would not be a problem.
Thomas, who's been out there from the city to look at this?
One of Stan Snodgrass's guys.
And what did
That's the only person.
they say?
I told them what was wrong. I think they're just covering for somebody. I don't know if that's true, but this is the only problem. At a 500 feet of property line behind my property, this is the only problem that I got. I can deal with the other water issues of natural draining, but this is not a natural drain. This is a man-made
Yeah.
creek that goes on my property and floods my property and the Lynx's property.
Mayor McGill, 5 minutes.
Okay. Jeff will be in touch with you, Jonas.
Thomas, can I ask one question first? If I remember the development property right, you've got plans to put buildings all the way back there, is that correct?
That is correct.
So you're starting in the front, if I've seen off of 0,
Hope everybody came by and looked at it, yes.
and
yes.
you're going to go to the back. So eventually, you'll be back there developing, and then it's going to be flooded.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Director Kemp.
I was just going to comment, pleasure meeting you. I met your business partner, drove out there myself, and had the wonderful privilege of meeting the foreman superintendent of the other group. At the same time, I was there with his business partner, and I moderated a good discussion that felt very cathartic between both parties. And one thing that I think that the city should be looking into is, and this is a proposal I had standing there with both parties, is that the utility easement, which may be ours or may belong to an electrical, but there is an easement coming up and there's a ditch until a certain point. And I don't know if we could look at extending that ditch further further up, and then have that directly going to that ditch as an option. And so my understanding from the other party was that the beaver cut that's being talked about was approved because there was water there that was just I guess an inch more than it should, and so the permission of that was to beaver cut not only there, but they did it on the other side, and they've done their best to deter it, and they put straw out, and so the picture with the dirt poured out over the concrete, he referenced page 9, he said, well, it's no longer doing that because the straw and things are catching it, and I did go after a rain, and he is correct. However, I am agreeing that this is sort of just an unforeseen, a lot of circumstances that have piled itself together to a mess, because the water, if it is coming off that way, slopes well into the Lynx property, right to the front of the Lynx apartment buildings. And so I think if the city could mitigate that with our utility easement, or if we have to get permission for an easement extension to do better by that ditch running up the property, that might be a way to mitigate both sides.
My suggestion is fixing the road is very expensive to do, and I understand that. The next step is we cut a drainage pot into that place where this needs to be and ran a conduit or a pipe over to existing watershed box, which is, they have one probably 150 feet from there. So there'd be a box put there and ran a conduit so the water would go in that containment box and run down to where it needs to go and back out toward the front of the road. That would take care of that problem. And as far as I know, they only cut one beaver dam in that, and that was the north west corner of where the property is. And it's based on the drawing that I got was approved by the city, and it's on page 3.
Okay, we're gonna ask the administration to get with engineering and the owners and figure out a good solution.
I've talked to the owners, and they've done everything that's been approved by the city. They just didn't go out there and cut a beaver slide in there on their own. They had to get approval from the city.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Chris Carter.
First of all, thanks, board. My name is Chris Carter. I'm the building principal at Northside High School, 2301 North B Street, Fort Smith, Arkansas. The discussion this afternoon that I'm bringing to you is based on a small business that has decided to set up shop within 40 feet of our farthest west classroom. It happens to be a vape store with a CBD sign in the front of it. So essentially, a student can walk out of first period class, walk across the street, buy a CBD vape, and make it to second period on time. If we are going to be, and this is not a negative discussion, we have enough negative people pointing fingers at you guys as council members, as me as a building principal, and quite honestly, as a member of the Fort Smith Public School System, and that's not what this is about. This is about us trying to come together to find some way to mitigate this issue and possibly write some sort of ordinance in place to prevent this from happening. It's a travesty. We moved into that facility on November the 19th, 1928. In 3 years, we will celebrate our 100th anniversary at Northside High School. And the first thing that people see when they drive down B Street in front of that beautiful school is a bright yellow and green facade with flashing lights that say CBD, glass, which is a term for bong, vape, and tobacco. If they would have, it's on the corner of 22nd and B Street. And I'd be curious to know what ordinance or what business they requested, what they requested to put in, because I've talked at length with George, who is my council member, and one of the things that he has instructed me is that they did follow the rules,
Yeah.
And there is an ordinance there where they can build. I think that is ridiculous. Not build, but set up a build. They have a shop at the corner of 22nd and B where they are currently prepared to open and sell CBD. I sent you guys an email this morning at 6 a.m. CBD, vapes, glass, which is another word for bong, and tobacco. I think that their facade, if you will, is that they're also going to open up a diner. So I'd be interested to know what they presented to the city on how they could set up shop that close to a public school. We have a great public school system. We are going to be a destination city. We have people moving in here from all over the world to fly jets. And if we don't sell our town and sell our public school system, we're going to miss out on some of the smartest kids in the world, because they're going to go to outlying areas, because the first thing they're going to do is drive down B Street and look and see a vape shop with CBD for sale within 30 feet of a classroom. That's a problem.
That is. Any comments from the board?
Yeah, is it, I do. Is there not anything on the books already?
No, I've called the state, I've talked to Maggie, there is absolutely no ordinance against that.
No ordinance against what?
The vape shop.
No, I'm talking about a vape shop, 'cause that's a fairly new thing, I would say. What about cigarettes?
I think it's,
alcohol.
I think it is a vape shop. I believe
It
it's
is,
not
it is,
tobacco.
it is designated as a vape shop, yet the email that I sent with that picture this morning to you is flashing CBD with a marijuana leaf in the
marijuana.
window.
Right, so here,
And folks, kids can see this from a classroom window.
Yeah, I was appalled when I saw it too.
It's ridiculous.
Of course, it was on Facebook. I think several of us reached out, but this is the response that I got back, and it's, Arkansas Tobacco Control. So the city of Fort Smith classifies a vape store as a tobacco shop, and that land use is permitted by right in the C2 zoning district. So this has a lot to do with zoning, as well as other commercial zones. Additionally, Arkansas Tobacco Control, ATC, does not have the proximity restriction for schools and tobacco shops. Convenience stores, grocery stores, and other superstores sell similar products, and some are located within close proximity to schools. So the issue is not just with the city, of course. Zoning, we could change zoning, but it sounds more like this needs to be a bigger issue dealing with the Arkansas Tobacco Control. But even though I know we need to address it now, but the question is, how do we do that? And that is not the information that I have to share.
Director Rigo.
Mayor McGill, 5 minutes.
I think this evening, and someone might want to correct me because it just was something I saw on social media, but I believe that the Planning Commission, which is also meeting right now, that it was on their agenda, or it came up tonight, that they changed to 1,000-foot.
That would be great.
So this may be, and is the business open yet?
It is, to my knowledge, it is not open.
Okay, so
If we can catch them before they open, that'd be wonderful.
check, but I saw some stuff.
Well, ask Maggie, Maggie knows.
Maggie's.
Come here, Maggie.
Hey, Maggie.
Planning Commission.
Didn't see you, Maggie, sorry.
Hi, Maggie.
Hi, how are you?
Great.
Good. I missed the question. The Planning Commission did approve recommended to the board approve a UDO amendment tonight to allow tobacco, including vape, CBD, all the others, to not go within 500, they amended it to 1,000 feet of a school or a daycare center.
So what does that mean for the place that is now setting up shop? Does that mean that they cannot open?
No, they would be considered grandfathered.
That's
They're
what I
legal
figured.
non-conforming. And
So-
you have to remember, so I think I heard you say alcohol tobacco control. So there's no proximity requirements at the state level. And at
Sure.
present, we have 152 establishments. Did you tell them this? I'm sorry, before I repeat. Okay. We have 152 establishments that sell vape products.
Yeah.
And 2 of those are located within 500 feet of a school. However, the amendment would only address that specific land use. So if it is a tobacco or a vape store, it's not going to address the Walgreens, the Circle K's, the Harps, or grocery stores, or anything else that sell those products. We can't, by state law, mandate what stores sell. So if it's a legal land use in that zoning district, they can sell what they want. However, if it's the specific land use, like the CBD, the vape store that's at 123 North 22nd Street, that would have been an issue.
Yeah, that's a small issue. You know, at the end of the day, we have to protect our kids. That's the bottom line. And vaping in schools is a pandemic, pushing up to an epidemic. Excuse me, it's an epidemic pushing towards a pandemic. And this should scare you, simply because at the end of the day, we have to protect our kids. And I'm not blaming anybody at this board. Please know that. I am in support of everything that you do. I speak highly of everyone at this round table, if you will, and I defend our great city and will to my dying day. But at the end of the day, it is our responsibility to protect our kids.
Yeah.
And I take it very seriously. I've been doing this for 30 years, and it seems like I've only been doing it for a year. It's the greatest job on the planet. But I can tell you, if we don't get a handle on this, and we don't intercept this or run interference on some of this nonsense that's going on within proximities of our schools, we're going to be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
And we're going to miss out on a great opportunity to have kids moving in here with these families from all over the world to not only improve our climate and culture within the school, but also, you know, there's a lot of people in our city that talk negatively about test scores. But these kids that are moving in and the kids that are already here, showing improvement, we could really do some great things in our public school system. But it starts with the adults making solid decisions on what's going up and around our schools.
Director Kemp. And
Thank you,
then
Mayor.
Director Settle.
Mr. Carter, thank you for your time tonight. I share in 100% agreement with you. I'd like administration to talk with legal and give us our options, if there are options. And if there are not options to do anything about it, then what are our political maneuvers that we can do with the state to address these issues? As a pastor, I'm ministering currently to students of great families who are having kids that are dealing with addiction to vapes, and have even talked to Chief Baker about some suspected retailers that are accommodating these situations. And so I think all these things need to be looked into, and it is happening not just on the north side of town.
Oh, yeah.
It's happening
It's all
on the
over
south
the
side of town. And I do agree with you. I don't think you're over exaggerating it. So perhaps we can look into it, and if there are any actions we can take within our legal bounds, or political maneuvering to go high and above and start working this, even if it takes some time to do so. Thank you.
Director Settle, and then Director Rigo.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you very much. I appreciate you bringing this to us. Maggie, has the business license to open been issued to that business yet?
Yes. That's my understanding. The zoning has been signed off on, fire's been signed off on.
Okay. I would like you to get the board of directors, the business license, and who the business is opening to, who the owner of that business is, to the board.
Blue Ox LLC, I can tell
I can't hear
you. Who owns
you.
it.
I'm asking who the business license.
Blue Ox LLC.
Yeah, but there's usually an owner, and it's landowner. Who's the owner of the business? Who's opening that business by name? And the question is, isn't there state and Arkansas regulations about marijuana close to school? So if there's a...
That's totally separate.
Yeah, but if they have a marijuana leaf, as Mr. Carter suggested, I mean, they're insinuating, they're insinuating that's there.
Yeah, the Medical Marijuana Commission regulates that, and the regulations are pretty tight.
That's what I thought too. That's
Yeah.
exactly where I was going with it. So my question becomes is, are they going to be trying to skirt that spot, or are they going to be doing something after they open they probably shouldn't be doing? Because if you put that leaf up there, you're telling kids or people or anybody, hey, you got this here. To me, that's wrong. So I'll say this in public, and if they do open up, I hope that there's some undercovers to make sure that this is done legit.
If I may be so
And
bold.
I see my police chief give me a thumbs up.
There you go. If I may be so bold, Director Rigo, before you speak, if you don't mind, I can say this, and I'm going to say it on the record, and whoever's watching. I have video cameras pointed right at their front door. And the first time, while I understand that there's really no legal age, to my knowledge, to sell CBD to anybody in Arkansas. The first time that I see my kids going in that business and coming out on video, I'm walking over there and I'm going to humiliate the person that owns that place.
You're saying there's not a legal age to buy?
Not to my knowledge.
Would we find that out, please? Because that is a board directive we can do and put city laws that can restrict ages for business.
You know, I think there's some laws on signage on businesses like that.
The whole,
Director Rigo.
the whole point I would make, I mean, I understand that it sounds like a business license has been issued. The place is not actually open for business yet. There was action taken by the Planning Commission tonight. There's action being contemplated by this board tonight. I mean, who cares if we issued a business license? Like, he who issues can taketh away, right? I mean, who, like, oh no, will the vape shop owner be mad at us? I mean, I don't, like, it's, if this is something that's come to our attention and they're not open for business yet, I mean, I'm not an attorney, but it would seem to me that we should have the ability, as the entity that issues the business license, to take it away.
But can a business not operate without a business license?
No. No, they cannot.
Not legally under state law or under city law? Okay.
I mean, Jared, I was actually thinking about, do we call a special meeting on Friday to pass what they just passed? That's what I was contemplating, that is call a special meeting Friday to pass what the planning commission passed.
I
And
am
then see-
shocked
and
if
see
there's
that would
not an
stop.
age requirement here, and that now will explain why I feel like the things I'm seeing.
Swimming upstream.
Yeah, well, we're just sitting here fighting something that definitely needs to be handled, and whether that is a state issue or a local issue, that is unbelievable if there's not an age requirement to that.
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. Thanks, Chris.
Listen, thank you guys. Know that you have my 100% support on everything that you do in this city. And we are a destination city and we're a destination school district. We put out some quality kids over the years and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
I make a motion to put on the next Tuesday night, the item that was approved by the planning commission tonight that restricts tobacco XYZ from 1,000 foot from the schools, churches, whatever it was.
Second.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay, next.
Next, we have Teresa Hogan.
Well, Rebecca's not coming out? Rebecca, come on.
Used to the mic more, maybe. Hello, first of all, I want to say thank you for everyone that holds any position in our city for your time and your energy. Believe me, energy matters it matters a lot at my age. And your love for this city. I was born in Van Buren, but I lived in Fort Smith from 3-year-old. I went to Trusty, Dirty and Rusty. Maybe the mayor will know that one. And then I went to Kimmons and graduated from Northside High School. Went to West Ark. So that's a long time ago. The principal came almost when I was graduating. He came later. And so I love this city. I'm coming before the board today to ask you, one of a young man that's going to speak a little later handed out some pamphlets to ask for a grant for a drug and alcohol recovery, focusing on the root, of course spiritually, but focusing on a lot of mental health. We work with Dr. Ashley. I've had an outpatient drug program for 20 years. So I know drugs. I know this city, and we have a huge problem with drugs and alcohol, mental health, and homeless. And I mean, we have a lot of problems, but these are what I've came here tonight for. Because we are going to launch, we have already launched baby launch a women's rehab. And we've had a men's rehab for 2.5 years, and I'm not really involved in that, but our director is a retired corporal from Van Buren Police Department, so it's good. And we want to do something for women, and we also want to have a side of that for the homeless. We have a homeless ministry outreach already, and we want to be able to take the women that the courts allow us to take. We deal for 20 years with judges, prosecutors, all of them. We know all of them. And now we want to launch something for bigger. Besides, this fly's got to go. This is, we love the city. We want to do something bigger, and it's a passion. It's a deep passion with me. I never seen drugs when I was growing up, except alcohol, and I didn't even think alcohol was a drug because it was so normal in my family. And then I became a pastor. Now we have a pastor on the board, so. And my son, my oldest son, ended up overdosing, and a police officer saved his life by literally noticing him over the steering wheel. And when it happened, I was actually in Argentina in a conference, and I thought my world was over. I have a drug addict child. I thought my world was ending. And I prayed, and I went inward, and I looked, and after I got back up, I thought, I'm going to hit back. So that's how we started the outpatient. So now I'm asking you wonderful people to help us with a women's in-house. And you got the paperwork on it. That's just a touch. You should have it. He handed it out. Maybe it's up there. Thank you, ma'am. Anyone who's familiar with running a drug rehab knows that it's a cost. It's a time and it's a passion, or you can't do it because you exhaust out. And so we have some donors that we are going to in this city that some of you know that has had they've lost people from overdoses, or they've had children in their life, and they're going to help us, but we need this city to help us with whatever you can. And that's short and sweet of the whole deal. You have everything listed there. We are pushing mental health huge, because if we don't, we could say, well, if we don't get the homeless sober, they're never going to get off the ground. Well, if we don't get the homeless mental health, they're not going to get sober.
Mayor McGill, 5 minutes.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
That's it. Thank you for listening.
Next, we have Clifford Kunkel.
My name is Clifford Kunkel. Thank you guys for hearing us out, and I want to advocate for Live Again. So Jack Robinson was a 30-year veteran police officer in Van Buren. He's the director of a place called the Hope House. I personally was a 30-year intravenous drug user. I've been to prison a long time ago, but I went several times. 5 times altogether in the Arkansas Department of Correction. 2 years ago, in fact, I was in Fort Smith. I was homeless. I was addicted. Family didn't want me. Kids didn't want me around. And a lady from a church told me that she knew a place that would take me, Hope House. So I went. It's a 6-month program, faith-based. They brought me in. I didn't have a driver's license. I didn't have money. I had nothing. They helped me get a driver's license. They helped me get a job. Most of all, they surrounded me with people that loved me, people that cared, taught me how to serve the Lord. I ended up getting a job. I saved my money. After 6 months of being in the program, I graduated with enough money to buy a truck. I got a truck. Didn't have any communication with my children, so that line started opening up. I stayed in the program. April of last year, I got a phone call from the grandmother of my children. I had been invited to Thanksgiving and Christmas, but through God's faith, through my faith in God and through this program, I was able to get my children back. I graduated that program November of 2023. I stayed in that program until April of 2024. I had saved enough money in the last 5 months to get me a home. I now have a 3-bedroom home. I have my children. Since graduating that program, the accomplishments, I have a great job. I was a project manager, a production manager. I have moved on from that. I'm now a process owner for Central States Manufacturing, one of the largest metal building manufacturing companies in America. I'm ordained. I'm a lead usher. I'm a pastor. I'm a men's pastor at Kingdom Living Church. But more important than all of that is I'm a dad. Family and children didn't have nothing to do with me for a few years. You know, I had really burned a lot of bridges, and I had been to prison. I had been to secular rehabs. I had been to SATP, all the government programs I say government, they're state programs, prison programs. Nothing helped me. But a program like this, like Live Again, so Live Again is going to be for women. The program I went to was just for men. This program that Teresa Hogan is trying to get funded helps people just like me. And I'd be willing to bet somebody here either has a loved one or you know somebody who has a loved one that suffers with addiction. It's not going to go away. It's going to have to be fought. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to fight this thing with love. God's second commandment is to love each other, right? This is the second greatest commandment. And a lot of rehabs are in it for money. They get, you've got to have insurance, you got to have all this stuff. This is a program that's local. You hear about changing the world. We can change the world right here in this community through love. I believe love is you don't really care how much somebody knows until you know how much they care. And when you start seeing that people are investing in you, you start to invest in yourself. I've learned how to serve God. I've learned how to serve others. I serve my community. I can't believe I'm a process owner. 2 years ago, guys, I was walking around in Fort Smith with nothing, homeless. So I'm proof that this works. This can work. I have a roadmap, and I'm on the board of directors for the Hope House. I want to be involved in the Live Again recovery. Obviously, it's for women, so I'll have to do it from the outside, but I still go back to this Hope House, and I tie into these guys. I sew into them. So please consider this. It's a big deal. Homelessness and addiction is not going to go away without a fight. So just know that it can be done. I'm living proof. I now have, like I said, I have my daughter's 3-bedroom home, 2-bath. The truck's about paid off. So that's a lot to do in a couple of years. And I just care about people. I care about people. People are hurting and people need love. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you. Madam Clerk.
Next, we have Tim and Clara Garvey.
Thank you. I spoke at the April 8th meeting in regards to the water rates in South Sebastian County. It was in December when we were, reevaluated and changed from South Sebastian County water rates to the Fort Smith water rate with the 50% surcharge. I only got half of my question answered, so that's the reason why I'm back. There was no communication whatsoever, and Mr. McAvoy did send out a letter. We received it the 1st of May, so all of those customers who were South Sebastian County water users rates received the letter. But the question that I did not get answered was, how can there not be any consideration for the fact that we were on a very reliable rural water system, James Fork, which the city took away from us when you wanted to expand your service, and then now you assess a 50% surcharge on us? We were happy with James Fork. We did not choose the City of Fort Smith Water Department. You chose us. We got sandwiched in because of the various additions out there that had been annexed into the city. And it was just convenient for you to, all the water lines were in place. There was no cost except for what you paid to James Fork over a period of time. And then when that was paid off, then we got switched over to Fort Smith water rates with a 50% surcharge. I heard the comment that if you live outside the city, you should expect to pay more. I don't think so. I think in the old tradition is that if you move outside the city because it's less, and you have rural conveniences. We did have and it's just across the street, they're still on James Fork.
Director Kemp.
Yes, Jeff, could you speak to that process, because that's prior to me. Doesn't James Fork agree to that in that process? Did they not give up that as a customer?
They did when they sold that, yes. And
Oh, I mean, I think, it's one way to look at this is, why would we acquire it? But also I would ask, why did James Fork sell?
There was quite a bit of litigation, I believe, according to what I found on Google, and that they finally agreed to it. It was a substantial amount of money, but when we received our letter, it said that we would continue to be billed at the South Sebastian County water user rates. And we invested a lot into our property with a sod and an irrigation system, but how can we justify a $700 water bill?
Basically, all we're wanting is an answer is, this went into effect last November.
December.
Why did it go into effect? Why did the surcharge? Why did it happen? We've been paying the same as the city for years. Why did it happen?
Well, the rates for the citizens of Fort Smith changed. My understanding, if I'm speaking correctly, is then outside users are going to feel that in the effect as well. By changing our rates, it's going to change the rates of outside users by the policy of the city of Fort Smith.
No, it didn't. It changed. That's what we're talking about.
The 150% is governed by state law. State law was passed that allowed cities to do this. And
When
our
did that
city,
law pass?
I don't remember what year, but it is a state law that passed. It's not something the city of Fort Smith did. It's governed by the state.
Well, they passed the law, but the city didn't have to do it, did they?
But the board chose to do that for outside
Why?
users.
Maybe we could ask Lance to visit with them and give them some detailed information on this.
I mean, I think that for a long period of time, outside the city, residents received a discount in water rates. We know the cost to supply water to folks outside is more expensive. Had that conversation with Lance not too long ago. There's more cost involved. That cost is being passed on to those that live outside of the city.
I would tell you that those who are using less than 8 cubic feet, the bill is actually less now. As a matter of fact, our water bill throughout the winter is $10 less than it was when we were on South Sebastian County water user rates. So something is just not jiving.
Mayor McGill, 5 minutes.
Okay. Let me suggest you take some time to visit with Lance McAvoy and see if he can shed some light on your issue. Okay, thank you for being here.
Next, we have Chris Cadelli.
Six.
After this, we'll have 5.
I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to speak. I know you probably aren't going to appreciate what I have to say, but I do appreciate the opportunity to come here as a citizen, a lifelong citizen of Fort Smith, to express my concerns. I just want to talk about the tax that's happening tonight. I'd like to mention that I found it interesting that the proposal was announced just months after the 53% water rate hike was implemented on us, and then of course the 3.5% annual sewer rate hike as well. Then the folks that you assigned to go out and pitch this and sell it, they're out there basically saying, hey, there's no plan B. If you don't pass this, your rates are going to go up another 40% is essentially what we're being told. And, as if we didn't already experience that dramatic water rate increase. I think these type of conversations are going to be, the norm going forward. You're going to have a lot of angry people in here as they start getting these bills. And then, of course, saying, hey, we want to share this cost with, people who come into town and buy stuff. Well, we're doing that already. We're charging sales tax to people who come into town. That's been going on forever and is going to continue to go on. So I just thought that was disingenuous in my opinion. If this punitive tax extension passes, I believe it will be status quo going forward with regard to the never-ending water and sewer infrastructure issues. I believe this will also facilitate the ongoing spending spree from the majority that makes up this board. We have 3 directors that just don't seem to ever want to pass on a spending item, just requires one swing vote. Typically they, to be fair, they can find one vote for most of these spending issues, and there we go. Talk to directors, and they're the kind of the standard answer is, I'm just one of 7, which is true. I understand that, so, I think there's an issue there with the way this government is set up, but that's, for another day. And then, on the other hand, in my opinion, if this tax extension fails tonight, it will be, present a commentary on distrust. A distrust brought about by a glaring lack of transparency and accountability, a distrust in the notion we could agree to take on this heavy burden and then expect a government essentially made up of the same key players that have us in the position we're in and expect a different result. So, in my opinion, we need a substantial dose of fiscal discipline, and that's kind of what, I hope we see going forward. Thank you.
Next, we have Andy Postrick.
Hi, thank you everybody. My name's Andy Postrick. Welcome to my neighborhood. I love living in Fort Smith because of the airport. I would describe myself as a frequent flyer. I just got back from London. I did lose my status with American Airlines last year, which was disappointing, but I'm halfway back up to gold status this year, so hopefully soon. First, I wanted to thank you for the new striping over on Roberts Boulevard. It's right here in this neighborhood. If you haven't been there before, maybe on your way home tonight, just go down that way, turn left on Chad Colley, and then it'll be a right on Roberts Boulevard. There's new signage, new sharrows up. It looks really good. Some of you may know that the reason why that was put up is because that is where a man named Stephen Hobbs was killed on September 20th, 2024. It was early in the morning, and the driver probably had the sun in his eyes. But it's a reminder of something that's very frustrating as an advocate, that everything is sort of reactionary. When I see Roberts Boulevard, I see an over-engineered, dangerous road, and anybody on a bike will recognize it as such because we built it that way. And another example of that, for example, that you might relate to is like South 66th Street and Rogers Avenue, where you have those people turning left out onto Rogers all the time. Everybody knows that's dangerous, but the city can't do anything until there's an accident, and then we finally got that accident, and now there's a no left turn sign. But that's sort of a frustrating thing as an advocate, that we have to wait until something lethal happens in many cases before any action can be taken. And that's not an ask from you, but I just wanted to let you know that that's something that frustrates me. So we spent all of this money to make Rogers Boulevard, and specifically the place where Mr. Hobbs was killed, extra wide, extra fast. And now that we've spent all of that extra money, the advocates like me come and we say, can we scale some of that back? Can we spend some money on guardrails, buffers, paint, crosswalks, signage? And so that's doubly frustrating because I get labeled as fiscally imprudent when really the issue was that we overspent on something in the first place, in my opinion. So right now, I'm letting you guys know, as soon as this week, maybe next week, administration is going to come and ask for you for $15 million to widen that road right there to 5 lanes from the current 2. We've been sitting here all night with the traffic right there as evidence that this isn't an extremely high traveled road, and certainly not as widely traveled as Rogers Avenue, which is also 5 lanes. So when we have a budget line item come up like a roadway expansion, I would appreciate that same level of scrutiny that you gave to Mr. Mings about the economics of Bikeshare programs, that we need to have that same discussion about roadway expansions. How many people are using this road? Where are they traveling to? How are land use patterns going to change by making it easier and quicker to drive on this roadway? It is my opinion, and historically we have seen this in other cities, that when you make it easier to travel into the city from outside, people will just leave the city. And that's losing your tax base. So that's another thing that I fear about widening Mazard Road, not to mention the fact that it will become faster and more dangerous for people like me who are on it every day on my bicycle, people like Stephen Hobbs. And then I will be back here after the next person dies asking for $300,000 or whatever to make a safety improvement when we could have prevented it from happening in the first place by not spending $15 million. So that are just some of my thoughts tonight. I really appreciate your time, and thank you very much.
Andy, where was that wreck again at? Robertson what?
It's Roberts on the overpass over 49.
So it's on the overpass that the state highway put in?
Yes, it's not this, it's not something that the city did.
And that's the overpass that the trucks from Mars and Graphic and Old Dominion and will take when the interstate opens up?
That's correct, yes.
Thank you.
Next we have as Madeline Bechtel? Bechtel? Okay.
Oh. Here, sit. Come on, Madeline.
I'd be nervous too from this group.
I think she had some concerns about or some ideas for dog parks she wanted to share.
Tell us. That's all right.
Could she, if she doesn't want to, could she send us a letter?
Yeah, maybe you could would you like to send us a letter about your dog park ideas? Okay.
She said she really enjoyed being chief of police for the day, too.
Are you sure you don't want to tell us about the dog park? Because I surely would love to hear a pitch about a dog park.
Did you have an idea of where you thought it might go?
Your ideas about
Kids have the best ideas.
Come on.
Where were you thinking that it might be a good spot for it?
By the circle part? No.
By the blue park?
Yeah.
That's the John Bell Park on,
Bell Park.
yeah, that's the blue park.
Yeah, that's the blue park.
Not a bad idea.
Do you think we should have space for small dogs separate from the big dogs? Do you think we should leave them all together?
Leave them all together.
Okay. It's good input.
Did you want a slide for the dogs?
Madeline, are you frustrated that that dog park on Mazard Road right down here got taken away?
Yeah.
I am too. And we've been telling people for years we're gonna put a new dog park in, and we haven't been able to. We haven't found the spot. Maybe Madeline's figured out a problem, and I think we need to look at that.
Okay, we'll take that under advisement. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think best suggestion we've heard all night.
In a month.
Next, we have Molly Echeverria.
Good evening. Today, I want to address Fort Smith's recent budget cuts with the Board of Directors approving $4.2 million in reductions in order to tackle the consent decree and other financial challenges. So one thing that needed to be considered was reducing department head salaries. For example, looking at Sarah Deuster, the Parks Director, whose position saw a significant salary increase. This raises critical questions about fairness and shared sacrifices. The $4.2 million in budget cuts targeted travel expenses, equipment, etc. The Utilities Department also reduced spending. Thankfully, critical services like police and fire were spared. These efforts reflect a commitment to fiscal responsibility while preserving core services. However, the board's failure to consider cuts to department head salaries is concerning. Deuster was promoted to Parks and Recreation. She earns a salary of $101,441 annually. This is a 36% increase from the salary of $74,000 for a pay grade 51 position as listed on the city's website. That's what her predecessor was paid. To be clear, this is not a personal critique of her, who has served Fort Smith since 2014 and leads vital initiatives in the park services. However, a 36% salary increase for her position amid these $4.2 million citywide cuts raises questions about equity and fairness. Department heads like Deuster are essential, yet excluding their salaries from budget discussions, especially after such significant raise, can erode public trust. For comparison, Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass recently took a pay cut to address budget issues, demonstrating shared sacrifices. And so department head salaries definitely need to be considered in future budget talks. Now, the board may argue that the cuts achieved things without touching executive pay, and that competitive salaries are necessary to secure talent such as her. However, transparency about significant raises could have fostered fairer discussions. I urge the board to reconsider this approach in future budgets, perhaps through public review or executive committee. A symbolic gesture like voluntary pay cut could build trust. Fort Smith's budget cuts are a step towards fiscal health, but overlooking department head salaries, especially significant raises, misses a chance to lead by example. Thank you.
She does not make 36% more than her predecessor.
Well, that's what I was able to find.
She doesn't.
Okay.
It's, I think she's in line or makes less than the previous administrator, or the previous Parks Director.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, Madam Clerk.
Next, we have Brian Westney.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Hey, a couple things I wasn't going to talk about, but the road expansion out here, I agree with Patrick on it. I live right off of McClure, on this road, and there's not enough traffic on there to I think, warrant the expansion. There is enough traffic on there between the hours of 9 o'clock and midnight to have a couple more police officers out there, because it does turn into a drag strip. I can hear it from my house. People on their motorcycles and their super fast cars are at 9,000 RPMs up and down that street. So I'd appreciate it if maybe the police would patrol that a little more. Also, not what I wanted to talk about, but that's okay, is I wrote a contract for the marijuana facility, one of the marijuana grow facilities. I did all the security contract for it. I appreciate all you guys fighting for that. Marijuana has a 1,000-foot rule. CBD doesn't, but CBD does technically have marijuana in it. So if you guys wanted to maybe piggyback on that, it has to have less than 3% to be CBD, but you can buy CBD on Amazon. So that's the one catch. But if you want to say, hey, you know what, CBD does have marijuana in it, and we're going to follow the state's law of 1,000 feet, that may be a good avenue for you guys to approach. But like I said, I can go on Amazon right now and buy CBD gummies. So kind of stopping somebody from doing it in their home would be almost impossible. But getting it away from the schools, I think, is key. I'd like to thank Mr. Mings, Michael Mings back there, for his dedication, his professionalism on his presentation he gave on the Bikeshare. It's extremely well. He's done very well with all of his projects. I mean, I've had hours of conversations over them. I don't necessarily agree with them, but I give him a lot of credit for all the hard work that he does. And he's a pit bull when it comes to finding money. So you may want to release him on this consent decree a little bit. I know he's the project guy for mobility, but man, maybe just bump him over, drop him in the other pen for about a month or two and see if he can find us some money on that consent decree. And that's kind of why I'm here, guys, is the tax. It's like, why do we always wait to the last second? It seems like we do that all the time. We waited to the last second, on the some solar panel stuff, and I was even asking, hey, why are we, we were even asking the basic questions like, where are we putting this? And we had to vote on it because the deadline was on Friday, and we had to vote on it. So it seems like we came up with this, this tax thing, boom, 2 months, earlier, and it's like, you got to do it now or else. The scare tactic came out, from a lot of people, Levon being, y'all's representative, it came out, it's like, you gotta do this or else, we're gonna raise your prices 50%. And I think that's the wrong way to go. It's kind of puts it, a bad taste in everybody's mouth. I think what should have happened is we need to break this tax down. I hope it fails tonight. But I will vote yes on it. But we need to break it down to 3 separate taxes. You have the road tax, we have the consent decree tax, and then we have, and right now it's police, right? But I say we change that verbiage to first responders. So it's the fire department can get some of that, the police department gets some of that, things of that nature to secure our city, to make it safer, big ticket items. But it's about $4 million, I think, pretty close to it a year. I mean, if they need that much money for 32 years, then they need to redo their budget and put that in there, because that's $4 million a year. And Levon said in one meeting, he goes, well, we could cut that off after about 8 years. Well, that's not what we just voted on. Am I right?
We as a board last week made the decision to remove everything else from this tax. So what we voted on today is only for the reallocation of the 5/8 cent and 1 cent from streets and consent decree. Police, fire, parks are all separated and will be voted on in 2030.
Okay, so all those,
Yes.
okay, have been, okay, I'm sorry, I did not.
The language on the ballot did not say that, but we broke it out last week. Director Settle made the motion, I seconded it, and we broke those things out. So those are all 2030s.
And then we added the streets to come back on 2030.
Yeah, the streets will come back,
All
right.
the non-consent decree taxes will be voted on by the public in 2030.
Okay, so they'll all be separated eventually? Okay, because that's kind of my next part is it's easy for tracking, makes it black and white. There's no, hey, where'd this money go? And you guys, it's just better for everybody across the board.
I think we heard the citizens and said, yeah, that's the right move.
Okay. And then skipping to the end here, because I think you guys just killed all my other comments.
That is 5 minutes, Mayor.
My one last statement, just because it's just hey, go easy on Arkoma. Just a little bit, maybe. But the only reason I say that is it's a little ironic that you guys are up here asking it, hey, what are they doing with that money? Are they fixing their infrastructure? And we just...
You do bring up a good point. There isn't much grace being provided to the city of Fort Smith. I know we're in arrears for a long time, but the back to your other point, and kind of circle this back up. I said on the meeting with the EPA and the DOJ in September, where they said, you guys got to work faster. And here's the rates we're going to give you, 15.5%, 15%. I think the 40% is well under, whatever Levon put in there, is well under what they say. They said 152%. They want to move. We're not in a point where we've screwed up for so long. We're not at a point where we can offer a lot of grace to others. For you and me having to pay those rates, we can't subsidize somebody else.
I totally agree. I definitely get your money from them.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if there's a way to not torture them and knock it out of the park, just because they're same thing that we had. You know, our instructor sucks, theirs may suck. So maybe we could just take it, but not, rip their shorts off at the same time.
Well, and we can offer some grace on that piece. Yeah. I can't say you pay $269 and I pay $875.
Yeah, I'm gonna go kick the Arkoma mayors, for that. So, appreciate you.
Appreciate your comments too.
Thank you, sir.
Last, we have Joe Elskin.
So I've been waiting 3 years to say this, and I thought this was going to be a short meeting, but we've had some wonderful citizen engagement. I have a small, every year, every meeting, every other meeting, this thought keeps coming into my head that members of this board could ease some of the, I wish I had known that, we didn't know that, if individual members had an area that they were getting information from, so Director Settle knows a lot about utilities, and if utilities reported to him weekly, then when something came up, he would improve the communication. And every member of this board has an area of interest. And so you would divide and conquer and make sure that communication was better and information came to one board member who then could say, okay, this matters, the board's going to want to know this, let me look at it. Obligation would be just to know more and improve communication. And it might be that you can't do it because you don't have the time, but some of these issues are interesting to individuals. You have areas of specialty. One of the reasons I decided tonight might be a good time to say it finally after 3 years is that I think storm mitigation is an issue that's going to get worse and worse. Environment's heating up. Drought creates floods. We're going to have a season of drought. We're going to have floods. And so if streets, utilities, whoever's doing the construction was aware of areas that are potential for flooding, then they would be proactive in looking for that. There are trainings for mitigation, and FEMA's not going to cover it for us. I mean, Arkansas has had 30 such disasters, $5 to $10 billion in the last five years. 17 of the $5 to $10 billion disasters in the last 3 years. Now, Fort Smith is blessed. I bless the mountains, okay? But we have it, and we will look forward to it. So I'm not look forward to it. We will suffer from it. So I was just a suggestion that divide and conquer and look into how to mitigate the crap that's coming. Excuse my French. Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you for all you do.
Madam Clerk, is there anything else?
That's all signed in to speak.
Mr. Mayor, before we adjourned, in light of our discussion tonight with Mr. Carter, I've had somebody on the camera do some research, thank you, my wife Terry. There is no state law that restricts CBD at all. So I'm going to make a motion for an ordinance to be put on next week's agenda that restricts the sale of CBD items inside the city of Fort Smith to anyone under the age of 21.
Under the age of what?
21. That will go in with what state law is with cigarettes, tobacco at the age of 21. So that matches the tobacco, e-cigarettes, vape products, and e-liquids to anybody in the age of 21 is what state law is. I'd like to add CBD to that for the city of Fort Smith, inside the city limits.
I just have a question. Is it, you have to be 21 to buy cigarettes?
According to the state law, it's e-cigarettes, vape products, and e-liquids is 21. Arkansas passed that in 2019. It applies to all tobacco products, including vaping devices, is what I just popped up. But I think I would like to make that motion to put an ordinance out there that restricts the sale of CBD items to individuals. You have to be under the age of 21. You can't buy CBD products inside the city of Fort Smith.
Let me make sure I'm clear on that. State law already says that, right?
No, state law does not restrict
it does
CBD
not.
sales. So I'm asking that if state law is going to do it, the city of Fort Smith is going to do it, and we go to the age of 21.
Are we able to regulate that?
I believe the cities are able to regulate things because we did regulate other things in the past, so I believe we
I
can.
didn't know if that would fall under like ATF or something.
I make a motion, if it gets second, legal can tell us, but I think we can regulate it. Just like we can regulate zoning, we can regulate water rates, the city has power to regulate things, and this is one of the things I think we can regulate.
I mean, I'm in favor of it, I'm just wondering about the legality of it.
Maggie,
Yeah,
yeah,
I will,
comment.
I will just say that it's my understanding that the state of Arkansas is not regulating it right now because there's a federal injunction. The CBD is considered a plant, and they're making food products based on plant. So we'll research that a little more, and we can find out.
I'll make my motion, and if come back next Tuesday and we can't, then tell us, but at least I want to make my motion.
Sure.
Hope I get a second to put on next week's agenda.
Second. And I'd like to make a motion as well, Mayor, if I may.
Yes, you're right.
I'd like to make a motion for, since this is kind of a topic that's been discussed and we're adding to the agenda next week about it, I'd like to make a motion to review the business license and the process for the business in question near Northside High School.
Second, and I just, while we're doing the due diligence of that, since I was trying to be a second on that one, I would love to know the exploration of the feet requirement, and if we can go back and even specifically the one that we're actually talking about right now, that when it was discussed, can you pull a license? I would like to understand all our options.
To clarify, your motion, was that to discuss or a resolution? Discuss for a regular meeting?
Well, I'd like to discuss, and see a resolution if it's determined that there's an action step that we can take. So as you all are preparing and working towards that agenda, if there's actions we could take potentially next Tuesday, I'd like to, the motion would be inclusive of seeing what those options are. Does your second still stand?
Yes, that's actually, yes, I'll stand with that.
Anything else to come before the board?
This was fun.
Seeing none,
At least we're not in
you
August.
got it.
Thank you, Rick.
So, how are you?